I never thought I'd be the guy writing one of these stories. For the past 2 years, I believed I was living the dream with Melissa. We met at a coffee shop downtown, classic, I know, when I accidentally knocked over her latte while rushing to a meeting. I offered to buy her a new one, and somehow that turned into dinner that same night. She was gorgeous, intelligent, and had this infectious laugh that could light up a room. Melissa was divorced, something she was upfront about from the beginning. According to her, her ex-husband, Richard, had been controlling and emotionally unavailable. Their marriage had lasted only 3 years before she'd finally had enough and filed for divorce. I appreciated her honesty and never pushed for more details than she was willing to share. Our relationship progressed quickly. Within 6 months, we were living together in my 2-bedroom apartment downtown. She moved in with surprisingly little, just clothes and personal items. She said she wanted a fresh start, leaving behind the furniture and memories from her previous life. I was more than happy to build something new together. Life was good. We had our routines, our favorite restaurants, weekend hiking trips, and a circle of friends we'd hang out with regularly. The only downside was my job as a network security specialist at a hospital. While it paid well, I had to work night shifts 3 times a week, monitoring systems and ensuring patient data remained secure. These shifts were from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m., leaving Melissa alone those nights. She never complained, though. In fact, she often said she enjoyed having some alone time to read, catch up on her shows, or video chat with her sister in California. I trusted her completely. Why wouldn't I? Looking back, there were signs, small things that I dismissed or rationalized away. About 6 months ago, Melissa started putting more effort into her appearance on the days I worked nights. I'd come home in the morning to find her in fresh pajamas, hair neatly brushed, and a hint of makeup still visible, despite her claims of having just woken up. When I mentioned it once, she laughed it off, saying she'd started a new skincare routine before bed and liked to look nice even when sleeping alone. Then there were the sheets. Twice I noticed they'd been changed when I returned home. When I asked about it, she said she'd spilled tea while reading in bed. Another time, she claimed she'd been sweating from a nightmare and wanted fresh bedding. Our sex life had changed, too. We went from being intimate several times a week to maybe once a week, always on days when I didn't have night shifts. She blamed it on stress from her new promotion at the marketing firm where she worked. I believed her and tried to be supportive. The third red flag was her phone. Melissa had always been relaxed about her phone, leaving it on the coffee table, charging it next to mine overnight. But gradually, it became an extension of her hand. She took it to the bathroom, kept it face down when not using it, and I noticed she had added a fingerprint lock when previously she'd just used a simple swipe pattern. Still, I trusted her. I didn't want to be that insecure boyfriend checking up on her or questioning her explanations. After all, we were happy, weren't we? Our apartment building was a renovated warehouse with 12 units. Most residents were young professionals who kept to themselves, but there was one exception, Mrs. Abernathy, a retired teacher in her late 60s who lived across the hall. She was sweet but nosy, always asking about our days and commenting on visitors to the building. I hadn't paid much attention to her until a Tuesday morning in April. I had just finished my night shift and was unlocking our apartment door when Mrs. Abernathy's door opened. "Good morning, Daniel," she said, clutching her robe around her thin frame. "Another long night. Morning, Mrs. A." "Yeah, the usual Tuesday madness," I replied, hoping to keep the conversation brief. I was exhausted and looking forward to a few hours of sleep before Melissa got home from work. She hesitated, then asked, "Is everything okay between you and Melissa?" The question caught me off guard. Of course, why wouldn't it be? "Oh, no reason," she said, not meeting my eyes. "Just checking in. You're such a nice couple." I thanked her and went inside, dismissing the encounter as nothing more than a lonely woman's attempt at conversation, but her question lingered in the back of my mind. 2 nights later, after another night shift, Mrs. Abernathy was waiting again. This time, she seemed more determined. "Daniel, dear," she began, "I'm not one to meddle in other people's business, but as someone who cares about you, I feel I should mention something." My stomach dropped as she continued. I've noticed a gentleman visiting your apartment on nights when you're at work. He arrives around 11 p.m. and leaves before 5 a.m. I thought perhaps he was a relative of Melissa's, but she trailed off, clearly uncomfortable. A visitor, are you sure it's our apartment? I asked, my voice steadier than I felt. I'm certain, dear, apartment 4B, your apartment. She paused. He uses a key. A key. That detail hit me like a physical blow. If Mrs. Abernathy was right, someone had a key to our home, a key Melissa must have given them. I thanked Mrs. Abernathy for her concern, but assured her it must be a misunderstanding. Maybe it was Melissa's sister visiting from California. But even as I offered these explanations, I knew they were hollow. Her sister would have no reason to visit only when I was gone, and certainly not in the middle of the night. That day, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, mentally cataloging all the small inconsistencies and changes in Melissa's behavior. By the time she came home from work, I had convinced myself that Mrs. Abernathy was mistaken or exaggerating. Melissa came home bubbly and affectionate, bringing takeout from my favorite Thai place. She chatted about work drama and suggested a weekend getaway to the mountains. Nothing in her behavior suggested guilt or deception. I pushed aside my doubts and didn't mention Mrs. Abernathy's comments. The following Tuesday, I was preparing to leave for my night shift when my phone pinged with a text from an unknown number. Daniel, this is Alina Abernathy. I got your number from the building directory. I'm sorry to contact you this way, but I thought you should see this. I don't like to spy, but after our conversation, I set up my old tablet to record the hallway. I'm not sure who this man is, but he came again last night. Attached was a video file. My hands shook as I opened it. The footage was grainy but clear enough. Our apartment door opening at 11:17 p.m. Melissa, wearing nothing but a silky robe, peeking out into the hallway. Then a man, tall, well-built, with dark hair, slipping inside. The timestamp showed Monday night when I'd been home with Melissa. We'd had dinner, watched a movie, and gone to bed together around 10. I'd left for work just before 9:30 a.m. Tuesday morning. In other words, this had happened just hours after I'd left. I watched the footage again. There was no mistaking Melissa or our apartment door. The man's face wasn't clearly visible, but something about his build and the way he moved was vaguely familiar. I called the hospital and told them I had a family emergency. Then I sat in my car in the parking garage trying to decide what to do. Part of me wanted to storm back upstairs and confront them. Another part needed more proof, something irrefutable. I texted Mrs. Abernathy, "Thank you. Is there any chance you could let me know if he arrives tonight?" Her response came quickly. "Of course, dear. I'm so sorry." I drove around aimlessly for hours, my mind racing with images of Melissa with another man in our bed. Around 10:30 p.m., I parked a block from our building and waited. At 11:05, my phone lit up with a text from Mrs. Abernathy. He just arrived. I sat there, frozen, for another 20 minutes. Then I drove to a cheap motel, checked in, and spent the night staring at the ceiling, my phone turned off. I didn't go home the next morning. Instead, I went to a coffee shop, ordered the strongest brew they had, and turned my phone back on. 12 missed calls from Melissa, 5 voicemails, and a string of increasingly frantic texts. "Hey, the hospital called looking for you. Everything okay? Daniel, please call me, I'm worried. Where are you? Please just let me know you're safe. I'm calling hospitals. This isn't funny. Please answer your phone." I ignored them all and called in sick to work for that night as well. Then I went to an electronics store and bought a small camera, the kind that could be hidden easily and accessed remotely. By 2 p.m., I knew what I needed to do. I waited until 3:30, when I knew Melissa would be in a weekly department meeting that usually ran long. Sure enough, when I entered our apartment, it was empty. I worked quickly, setting up the camera on the bookshelf in our bedroom, angled toward the bed. I checked that it was working properly, connecting it to an app on my phone. Then I packed a small overnight bag with essentials and left before Melissa could return. That evening, Melissa called again. This time I answered. "Daniel, oh my God, where have you been? I've been worried sick." Her voice was shrill with panic or a convincing imitation of it. "Sorry about that," I said, keeping my voice neutral. My phone died and I needed some space to think about some things. I'm staying with a friend tonight. What things? What's going on? Please come home so we can talk about whatever's bothering you. I think we both need a night to ourselves, I replied. I'll be home tomorrow after work. We can talk then. She tried to press for more information, but I kept my responses vague and ended the call, promising to see her the following evening. Then I checked the camera feed on my phone. Melissa was pacing our living room, still on her phone, probably calling someone else. I couldn't hear what she was saying, but her gestures were agitated. That night, I barely slept, checking the camera feed every hour. At 11:13 p.m., motion in the bedroom triggered an alert. I watched, sick to my stomach, as Melissa entered the bedroom. She was on the phone again, her voice now audible through the camera's microphone. He said he's coming home tomorrow evening, she was saying. I don't know where he was last night or what he knows. No, I'm not accusing you of anything, but the timing is suspicious. Of course Mrs. Abernathy could have said something. She's always watching the hallway. Look, we need to be careful for a while, maybe cool things off until I'm sure. I know. She paused, listening to the person on the other end, then her face softened. I miss you too, but we can't tonight, it's too risky, he could show up anytime. Yes, I'm still going to. Don't worry about that part, just stick to the plan we discussed. I love you too. Hearing those last words she had said to me just hours earlier, felt like a knife to the chest, but it was the confirmation I needed. I now knew 3 things for certain. 1. Melissa was having an affair. 2. She suspected I might know something. 3. She and her lover had some kind of plan. What I still didn't know was who the man was, though I had my suspicions based on Mrs. Abernathy's video. I needed to see his face. Part 6, the truth revealed. I didn't go home the next evening as promised. Instead, I texted Melissa that I had to work a double shift because a colleague called in sick. It was a plausible excuse she wouldn't question. Her response was understanding but tinged with disappointment, a masterful performance from someone leading a double life. That night, I watched the camera feed from my motel room. Melissa paced, checked her phone repeatedly, and seemed agitated. At 10:45 p.m., she changed into a revealing nightgown I'd never seen before and applied fresh makeup. At 11:10, she received a text that made her smile. She disappeared from the bedroom. Moments later, she returned, and she wasn't alone. The man who followed her into our bedroom was exactly who I'd feared it might be, Richard, her ex-husband. Now I understood why his silhouette had seemed familiar in Mrs. Abernathy's video. I'd seen photos of him on social media when Melissa and I first started dating, before she deleted her old accounts. I watched, numb with rage and betrayal, as they embraced. Their conversation was casual, intimate, clearly not their first time together. Richard made himself at home, removing his watch and placing it on what had been my nightstand. Melissa laughed at something he said and playfully pushed him onto our bed. I turned off the video feed. I had seen enough. The next morning, I took a personal day from work and waited until Melissa left for her office. Then I returned to our apartment and began methodically gathering evidence. I downloaded the video footage from the night before. I found a hidden box in the back of Melissa's closet containing lingerie I'd never seen, and a prepaid phone with hundreds of text messages between her and Richard, dating back over a year, almost our entire relationship. The messages revealed everything. Richard had never truly let Melissa go. Their divorce had been mutual, a strategic decision when his company faced a lawsuit. By divorcing, they'd protected their assets. The plan had always been to get back together once the legal threats blew over, but then Melissa had met me, and I'd unknowingly thrown a wrench in their scheme. I was a convenient cover, a safe place for Melissa to stay while they waited out the legal issues. Richard couldn't maintain their previous lifestyle with his assets frozen, and Melissa had grown accustomed to comfort. I provided that, along with emotional support and genuine love, while she continued her relationship with Richard behind my back. The messages also revealed their future plans. Once Richard's legal troubles were resolved, apparently imminent, Melissa would leave me for him, claiming she'd reconnected with her ex and realized she still had feelings for him. They thought this approach would seem natural, even generous, giving me a reason that wouldn't destroy my self-esteem. How thoughtful of them. I spent the day setting my plan in motion. First, I transferred my half of our shared savings to my personal account. I contacted our landlord, explaining I needed to break the lease due to unforeseen circumstances. He was sympathetic, especially when I offered to pay the penalty fee up front. Next, I called my boss and requested an immediate transfer to our company's Seattle office, something that had been offered months ago, but I declined because of Melissa. This time, I accepted enthusiastically. My boss was surprised but pleased, promising to expedite the paperwork. Then I packed my essential belongings, leaving behind anything Melissa and I had purchased together. I left her clothes untouched but removed all my photos from the frames, leaving empty spaces on the walls and shelves. Finally, I wrote a letter. Melissa, by the time you read this, I'll be gone. Don't worry about coming up with a gentle way to leave me for Richard. I've saved you the trouble. Yes, I know about your year-long affair. I know about the plan you two concocted. I know everything. I've paid the lease-breaking penalty. The apartment is yours until the end of next month if you want it. After that, you're on your own, or I guess with Richard once his legal troubles are resolved. Please don't contact me. There's nothing left to say. Daniel P.S. I left something for you on the TV. I placed the letter on the kitchen counter and set up my laptop on the TV stand, connected to the television with an HDMI cable. On the screen was a paused video, a compilation of footage from the hidden camera, along with screenshots of text messages between her and Richard. I set it to play when the TV was turned on. Then I took one last look around the apartment that had been our home, picked up my bags, and walked out. I had one more stop to make before leaving town, Mrs. Abernathy's apartment. I knocked on her door and she answered immediately, as if she'd been waiting for me. "You're leaving," she said. It wasn't a question. "Yes, I wanted to thank you for telling me the truth," she nodded sadly. "I hated doing it, but I've seen too many good people hurt by lies." My Harold, God rest his soul, he would have wanted me to speak up. I handed her a small gift bag containing a box of her favorite chocolates and a thank you card with my new contact information. "If you ever need anything, please call me." She squeezed my hand. "You take care of yourself, Daniel. There are honest women out there. Don't let this one ruin your faith in all of them." I promised I wouldn't and said goodbye. I was crossing into Nevada when my phone exploded with notifications. Melissa had discovered my absence and the video. Calls, texts, voicemails poured in. "Daniel, please call me." "It's not what you think. Please let me explain. Answer your phone. We need to talk about this. You don't understand the situation with Richard. Where are you?" I silenced my phone and continued driving. In a motel that night, I listened to one voicemail where she was sobbing, claiming she'd been confused, that Richard had manipulated her, that she truly loved me. In another, her tone had changed to anger, accusing me of spying on her and violating her privacy. The next day brought more messages, now alternating between desperate pleas and threats. Apparently, Richard had abandoned her when he learned I'd discovered everything. Without him or me, she was facing the consequences of her actions alone. By the time I reached Seattle and checked into a corporate apartment 3 days later, Melissa's messages had taken on a new tone, one of resignation and regret. She admitted everything, said she'd made a terrible mistake, that she'd been motivated by financial security, but had genuinely fallen for me along the way. It didn't matter. I blocked her number and social media accounts. Through a mutual friend, I learned she'd moved back in with her parents in Oregon, her reputation in tatters after Richard leaked their scheme to mutual acquaintances, trying to distance himself from the fallout. As for me, I settled into my new life in Seattle. The pain didn't disappear overnight, but it faded with time. I focused on my career, made new friends, and eventually started dating again, this time with a healthier sense of caution and self-respect. 6 months later, I received a letter forwarded from my old address. It was from Melissa, a final attempt to explain herself and ask for forgiveness. I read it once, then shredded it. "Some betrayals don't deserve second chances. The experience changed me, but not in the way Melissa and Richard might have expected. Instead of becoming bitter or distrustful, I became more attuned to authenticity in relationships. I learned to recognize the difference between real connection and convenient arrangement. And sometimes, late at night, I think about Mrs. Abernathy and her willingness to get involved when she could have looked the other way. One person's courage to speak an uncomfortable truth had changed the course of my life. For that, I would always be grateful. Sometimes, the kindness of strangers saves us from the betrayal of those we love.